Prepared casters are having a rough time in this narrative economy. At the start of the day, they have to guess right when making their spell selection, or else they just suffer. So where does this requirement for guesswork come from? Has it always been there? And what happens when we, as GMs and adventure designers, remove it? Hey everyone, Utkarsh from Spirit Bell Games here. Today, I'm talking about prepared casters like wizards, druids, clerics, and to some extent, this also applies to prepared martials like alchemists, commanders, and high-level fighters with their combat flexibility feature. These are classes that have some way of preparing for the day by changing up some of their abilities. Some of them, like Spell Substitution Wizard or the Commander, can also do additional preparations throughout the day, spend 10 minutes to change up their abilities some more. But regardless, a lot of players find that playing this full Vancian caster, this prepared caster, it leads to a less satisfying experience than playing just a spontaneous caster. Even though on paper, this style seems to offer more flexibility across multiple days, within the same day, the problem is that each slot is locked into one spell. For example, if a cleric prepared a third rank water breathing into a third rank spell slot, and the party never approaches a body of water that day, then that slot is essentially useless for the rest of that day. But if a divine sorcerer, on the other hand, has heroism, fear, and water breathing prepared as third rank spells, or known spells, not prepared, then they could cast heroism 4 times instead of needing to use the water breathing at all. So on the surface, it can seem like the sorcerer has more flexibility than a prepared caster, and that the cleric in this case is only good if they can see that water breathing situation coming from like a day off. And that feels like a niche usage. I mean, in an equivalent situation, couldn't a sorcerer just buy a scroll of water breathing? So to understand this imbalance more deeply and develop potential solutions, let us start by theorizing situations when prepared casters have the edge over spontaneous casters. What would they need? Well, first up, they need information. They need a way for the casters to know what challenges and what specific opponents are coming up in future days. Speaking of future days, secondly, they need time. There needs to be a daily preparation slot in between learning that information and the encounter. And thirdly, preparation has to matter. There needs to be meaningful difference between preparing and not preparing. Otherwise, why not just play a sorcerer anyway? Now, the most meaningful difference would be if the fight would be unwinnable without preparation and then becomes winnable with preparation. But that's maybe a little too extreme for this system. So a more toned down version of it might be that a fight that is extreme difficulty without preparation can feel like severe or moderate difficulty with preparation. So once again, we need 3 things. We need information, time, and a significant difference between preparing and not preparing. Let us call these 3 features together the Witcher school of adventure design. Because information, time to prepare, and making preparations are 3 hallmarks of the Witcher video games. They're things that make a Witcher feel like a Witcher and makes the gameplay more satisfying. And in the harder difficulty mode, they become necessary. But these 3 requirements run counter to many modern-day adventure design principles. What we see a lot instead are surprise. This is the opposite of information. PCs are ambushed by a creature or many creatures that they've never seen before, and they need to figure out what these creatures' abilities are so that they can beat the encounter. A lot of Pathfinder 2e's recall knowledge systems seem to be built around this aspect of surprise. I mean, if a mastermind rogue already knows everything about the creature they're going to encounter, they don't get that much value out of making recall knowledge checks within the encounter, do they? But if they don't make those recall knowledge checks, they don't get their special sneak attack opportunities. The second thing is urgency, which is the opposite of time. a villain is completing an occult ritual, or giant eagles are attacking Anadi as they are running away, or a monster that you have spontaneously encountered in this dungeon will fight you until it dies. There are many ways for an adventure to set up urgency, and most of these lead to insufficient time for a caster to prepare, to change up their preparations. And the third thing is the come as you are principle. This is the opposite of the preparation principle, that preparation must make a difference. Instead, in most well-designed adventures today, it doesn't matter how much you've prepared, and it usually doesn't matter what class you are. From my experience with the community, come as you are adventures are considered good design, whereas adventures which may disfavor certain abilities or certain approaches, like summoning spells or precision damage, like those adventures are considered bad design because they don't say come as you are, they say come specifically as not these things or as specific classes. Broadly speaking, this comes from the egalitarian view that all classes should have an equally good time with the designed adventure, which, I mean, it's hard to not get behind that kind of a principle, but it is something that clashes with the Witcher style. Anyway, these three features, we could call them the heroic school of adventure design. And almost immediately, we can see why this school is so popular. GMs love to surprise their players. GMs often run games in which PC death is extremely rare, and so they need a different source of tension, and that tension is often provided by urgency, the ritual that's about to be completed. Also, GMs dislike curtailing the options that their players have when it comes to building their characters, and so the come as you are approach is, again, broadly considered good design. At this point, it's tempting to just declare that the heroic school is the winner, it's the better one, and that all adventures should be heroic, and that prepared casters just need to pack up and leave. But you know what? I like playing Witcher. I like exploring and investigating to find out about monsters' strengths and weaknesses, and then I like customizing my preparations, preparing those oils and mutagens and potions so that I'm fully outfitted to just handle that one particular fight. I really like going into the seemingly impossible high-level fight and then beating it because of my preparation. And I'd be willing to bet that I'm not the only one. I want this style of adventures to exist. And as an avid homebrewer, if I want something to exist badly and I don't see a lot of it around me, I just have to create it. I am right now creating this Warden's Hunt series with this Witcher School of Design, and here's what I have learned, both as designer and as a GM. I've learned that it is possible, to some extent, to combine the two schools. You can set up one big threat, one headliner monster that your players have to fight, they may have to do research for, but along the way to getting to that big fight, you can throw in some surprise smaller encounters, things that the party can beat, come as they are spontaneously. The second thing is, you can still add some amount of urgency by giving a generous deadline. For example, in the Warden's Hunt, a 30-day deadline is usually enough to get players thinking about optimizing their days and their in-game time, when really it's quite a bit of time for them to do their research phase and then go into the exploration phase and then find the monster and come back. So you can get the benefits of both. Enough time to do daily preparations and still have some sense of urgency. But 3, if preparation is supposed to matter, it is inevitable that certain classes and playstyles will be favored over others. In particular, for Warden's Hunt, Rangers and Druids perform quite well in this format, followed by other prepared casters, and then alchemists, and then those who invest in survival and crafting. The principle that I'm breaking here is the come as you are principle. And I don't like that I have to break it, but given the proliferation of adventures that have that come as you are principle, I think it's fine to have some subset of tailored adventures that focus on a subset of options, on highlighting rangers and druids and other prepared casters, as long as I'm upfront to my players that these are the classes that are favored. Now, this is how I'm attempting to reconcile the Witcher school of adventure design with the heroic school of adventure design. And at first blush, it may sound like something that's innovative and a cool new way forward. But for those of you who've been around the TTRPG block, familiarity bells are already ringing, right? Let's look at the features we've talked about. Need for exploration and research to get information on creatures, player-driven timelines, and deadly combats without preparation. This is a dungeon crawl. This isn't new. This is literally the origin of the hobby, which partly explains why prepared casters also were there in the origin of the hobby. In fact, all of these 3 points that I've mentioned as requirements of the Witcher style, these are literally complaints that people have about Abomination Vaults, the flagship dungeon crawl of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Players complain that they get into these fights that are big existential threats that can kill PCs, sometimes even TPK, that some of their main class features like precision damage just does not work against many monsters. And meanwhile, GMs complain that there isn't enough urgency and time pressure to make the players just go through those dungeon levels quickly. Now, I will say I'm not here to defend Abomination Vault's design. I haven't played all of it. I haven't run it. And from what I've read, it seems like a lot of the information about those very dangerous monsters tend to be gated behind one-off skill checks. That's not my favorite design. In my own adventures, I prefer a much more comprehensive research phase, harkening back to that Monster of the Week style TV shows in the early 2000s, for example. And also, of course, the Witcher games. But we can at least see what they were going for in Abomination Vaults, and we can fix the things that we want to fix to make our adventures more appealing to both prepared casters and spontaneous classes. Even if you do not have prepared casters in the party that you are GMing, you can still include elements of preparation via adding like a research phase that PCs could do, and then they could purchase or craft items that are good against that specific creature. You know what? Let's formalize this a little bit. Let's say that there are 3 things that specifically you as the GM have the power to reveal to your players about what's coming up. You can reveal the specifics of the challenge that's coming up. Is the upcoming day going to be more combat or more infiltration or more about influence? You can reveal specifics about the opposition that's coming up. Creature details could be research, strengths and weaknesses, for example. You could even go all out and allow the players to learn the creature's entire stat block if the creature is sufficiently difficult to fight or if they have put in enough research. And thirdly, the environment specifics. What is the terrain and weather going to be? Are there going to be any hazards in play? Give your wizard the opportunity to prepare air bubble in advance, for example. Now, instead of always revealing all of these things, what you can do is per adventuring arc or adventuring day, you can choose subsets. One time, you may choose to reveal just that an influence encounter is going to be the major thing the next day. At other time, you can let them find out a monster's major strength and the weather condition in which you would be fighting it. Still another time, you may tell them that, hey, people at previous adventures have died due to choking clouds. So, prepare that air bubble spell. One complaint that people have with Pathfinder 2e's spellcasting system is they say that it has too many niche spells. But this exact situation is why those spells exist, for the benefit of the informed, prepared caster. But they need to first become informed so that they can go beyond their broadly useful spells and dip into those niche ones. Ultimately, revealing these pieces of information, instead of keeping them as a surprise, will get you investment from players who like this Witcher style of gameplay, not just prepared casters. And I've been calling it the Witcher style for all this video, but there is another name I could give it, which is the OSR style of play. Now, Some people would argue that Pathfinder 2nd Edition is the literal antithesis of OSR style of play, while others might ask, what the heck is OSR style of play? But that is a topic for a future video to try and define OSR play, to discuss how to apply OSR principles to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and to see if the system is receptive to those principles or if its design actively rejects them. For now, this is me signing off, wishing you all engaging games.